Hello and welcome to the Morningscape podcast. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell, here to go through the Tuesday, February 27th NHL Daily Fantasy Slate. DJ, let me be the first to wish you a happy Best Puck playoff season.
Yeah, no, feels pretty good to get there. I feel like everyone had the same reaction of like, okay, wait, that starts. Oh, well, yeah, no, it starts right now. Oh yeah, I forgot all about that. But it's an exciting 6 weeks. I'm excited. I don't know. I think both of us came into last week feeling a little bit better than it finished, but we both still come in well above expected. So let's get after it.
Yeah, anyone who's interested in the underdog Best Puck stuff and doesn't lurk the Discord or follow me closely on Twitter, I spent a lot of time on both Twitter and the Discord going through some of the results and some of my very high level takeaways just from the initial data I was able to pull and sort of go in and manually do myself. So there's also a way for you to do it yourself. It requires some power querying in Excel, but I did post a link to that as well. There's a new channel in the Discord called Dog App, #Dog App, for just underdog stuff that to try and keep it a bit segregated and maybe stir up more, underdog specific conversation without just sort of getting lost in the multiple threads of conversation. So I figured it's long overdue. But anyway, not going to spend any more time on that here. There's obviously a whole off season to cover what we learned and what the takeaways were from the actual fantasy best ball season in the NHL. So we're here to talk about the DFS slate. There are 12 games. So DJ, anything else you want to say off the bat before we get into things?
No, well, let's get right into it. I'll read through the games. You can make sure that the read is up for when I finish. Buffalo is going to be at Florida. The 3 win in a row Buffalo Sabres, first time we could say that all year, are plus 185 to the minus 225 Florida Panthers, and a 6.5 over under plus 100. Game number 2, Washington on a back-to-back against the Fighting Patrick Kane Detroit Red Wings. I'm guessing if you are listening to the show, you probably saw that he had the game winner against the Chicago Blackhawks. It was actually, I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, a bit loser mentality, but if you're the Blackhawks, you can have loser mentality. They're minus 180 favorites, the Red Wings, 6.5 over under. And like I said, a back-to-back for Washington. Arizona without Clayton Keller will go to Montreal. Two bad teams, but Arizona the favorite without Keller right now, minus 120 to the plus 100 Canadians. Kind of considering just betting the Canadians right now, but we'll get back to that. 6.5 over under on that one. Tampa Bay against the Philadelphia Flyers. We're gonna have to wait till tomorrow on some news and notes. Connecty's missed the past couple games, but I assume he could be back. Tampa Bay has been just absolutely Kucherov 4 points on Sunday. I mean, the guy is just going nuts. They're minus 125 favorites on the road in Philly and a 6 over under. Vegas at Toronto. We just saw this game in Vegas. Now it goes to Toronto, minus 170 on the Maple Leafs, 6.5 over under. Vegas is pretty banged up. Carolina is at Minnesota. It is a 6 over under, plus 130 for the home. Minnesota Wild, minus 155 on Carolina. Ottawa, back-to-back in Nashville. Nashville minus 142 favorites. They've been pretty hot as of late as well, winning games and just very quietly in a playoff spot right now. Ottawa, on the other hand, I think 14 points out. They need to rattle off a metric ton of wins to get back in the mix. It is a 6.5 over under. The St. Louis Blues will go to Winnipeg, take on the Jets. That is a 5.5 over under. That is our lowest total on the slate. Minus 125. Winnipeg is a minus 192 favorite in this one, so pretty big favorites. The LA Kings on a back-to-back go to Calgary. Are they in Edmonton tonight? Why did I think they were home?
Yes.
They must be in Edmonton. They have to be in
It's
Edmonton.
It's a 9:30 game, so I'm almost certain they're in Edmonton.
Yeah, it's got to be. Okay. I don't know why I thought they were home, but they're not. They're going to Canada. Anyways, they're minus 122 favorites. The 6 over under as a coin flip. Dallas on a back-to-back at Colorado. This is a minus 142 for the Avalanche, 6.5. Dallas on a back-to-back. Pittsburgh will be without Brian Rust, and of course still Jake Gensel going to Vancouver to take on the Canucks. It is a minus 155 for Vancouver, 6.5 over under plus 102. And finally, the New Jersey Devils will go to the San Jose Sharks, where even though I don't think New Jersey's won a game in my entire life, it feels like at this point they are minus 250 favorites on the road in San Jose in a game they absolutely have to have if they want to get back into the mix. Any thoughts, concerns, comments, or are you ready to read a thing?
Yeah, the slate in general seems pretty clean on the defensive end of things, meaning there's not going to be a ton of injury related value. Obviously, we'll see if anything arises from the few teams on a back to back on Monday. But at forward, it is an absolute war zone out there. So I'm keeping an eye on specifically Eric Zanek and Monahan at center. There's other stuff, but mostly guys we don't really care about. And then at the wing position, we are looking for, you mentioned all these, but Konechny, we're obviously trying to figure out how Arizona is going to adapt to no Keller. We are watching for news on Jeff Skinner. And then we know that Tyler Sagan and Mark Stone and Brian Rust are all out as well. So a lot of potential value spots, a lot of potential changes up and down the lineups for a few teams. So yeah, there's a lot of things to keep an eye on for the forward groups, and we'll touch on some of the if then or main benefactors from these injury spots as we go. But before we get into the game by game, this podcast is brought to you by DraftKings, specifically the sports book. But we're a daily fantasy podcast here, and we highly encourage you to play on the DraftKings daily fantasy platform as well. So we know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get 200 instantly in bonus bets. DJ just ran through all the lines, so just bet whatever the hell you want. There's lots of good player props out there and whatnot as well. Would be remiss to not mention our friends at Puckluck, who now have everything updated and seems like they're settled in for the stretch drive over there. In any case, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get 200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN, the Hockey Podcast Network. THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-878-97777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. So 12 games, mentioned a few things to look for off the bat, but let's go right away into one of the major spots on the slate, just from I suppose from a top end perspective. Florida hosting the Buffalo Sabres. Matthew Tkachuk missed their most recent game, but he is expected to return. So I guess crisis averted for the Panthers. But yeah, this does leave us with several high-end options in what is a pretty good matchup and a revenge spot for some of the more, the Reinhardts and Montours of the world here. So DJ, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still sticking to not attacking Florida, and this game doesn't make me all that nervous about it. I have, continued to watch exactly what I said would happen with Rasmus Dahlin. But the price is incredibly reflective of that. He's up to 7,700 now, but the blocks and the shots have all been there. He's been integral in the Sabres offense, of course. I'm not going to be, but again, like the point for all of that is that I feel like he's a necessary component that he Sabres built, and I'm not spending that price for him in this matchup. So I'm out on the Sabres. I could get talked into Florida, but anything you wanted to say first about the Sabres, which we have a question mark on, and then we also, I think, are going to have question marks on what the Panthers might look like.
No, I mean, the Sabres are the Sabres. They're not very good. Even with Owen Power back, Dahlin played 31 minutes last game, so I don't know. He's 7,700. It's not a great play, because obviously when you play Dahlin, it just means you can't play one of the Florida guys or other high-end options on the slate. But if you really like some cheap stacks, Dahlin is a fine one-off. I mean, there's really no defenseman getting the sort of role that he has right now. So that's, that explains the price, but also he's been unbelievable with those minutes he's gotten. So much so that even 7,700 is not crazy if we knew he's going to get 30 minutes, which, at this point, Sabres are still fighting for their lives, technically. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect that to change. So, otherwise, Florida. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Florida's been in a bit of a cold spell scoring wise at 5-on-5. Their power play really heated up with Kachuk at the helm. So I would be somewhat interested in stacking around Kachuk, but honestly, the prices now, just looking around the rest of the slate, don't make me feel great on Florida. So it's certainly interesting, but do you feel strongly about whether you'd go top line, second line, some combination for the Panthers?
I mean, do we know what this Matt the Truck injury was?
Um, I don't. He got hurt like mid game though, so I'm sure you could find some video and Zapruder film it, but it didn't seem like they were that worried, in all honesty, like right away. So I was actually kind of
Yeah,
a little bit surprised when he missed the last game, but yeah, I mean,
I just, in my opinion, I mean, again, I am not going to sit here and ever defend the Buffalo Sabres. They're really all that horrendous defensively, and I would have enough hesitation surrounding Matt Tkachuk, and I have to, I would have to have confidence that this injury is not something that is going to hamper his production offensively. We've seen all season in Buffalo, Tage Thompson just not be the same guy after a wrist injury. So I would really need to know that that's the case. I do think people will be scared to play Matt Tkachuk as well. But even if he's 100%, I don't think it's a slam dunk at 7,500 by any stretch. Like, it's a great price, but it's not anything I have to play because the Sabres, again, I just think are actually a bit better defensively than we give them credit for. And the other line, if it is back to Verhaeghe, Reinhart, Barkov, like, I'm just more interested in that. Like, that's the line I think that has the explosive upside comparatively. So
yeah,
I would go to line one. Erod was their last game with Reinhart and Barkov. So if that sticks, another revenge spot, if you will, you could actually just play a full revenge Reinhart, Rodriguez, and Montour if you actually have stones. I don't, so I will not. But the point of all of this I'm saying is I need clarification, obviously, on the line tomorrow. And then, yeah, I think I'd go with line one, but honestly, I don't plan on playing either.
yeah, no, that's pretty much where I'm at as well. The Sabres aren't quite as bad defensively as I mean, their results are pretty solid defensively, but just in general, like the struggle with them all year has been scoring. So I don't really think that Jeff Skinner missing is any like, oh, like there's any change to the Florida matchup, and the Florida prices are just kind of high. So if you're going to stack them, just go all the way in. I'm not really sure you can one off a guy like Kachuk here. At least maybe I'm just not that interested in it, but you certainly could. For the Buffalo side, the only note is if Skinner does wind up missing, we could see someone like Paterka slide up there. Now, that's a bit dicey because as of last game, Paterka is no longer on the freaking power play at all. Like, not even, this is a guy who I think they should be building around. And Granado's like, actually, he's not as good on the power play as both of Kyle Ekposo and Jordan Greenway. Like, one of those guys to be a net front idiot, sure. Both of them, it's just, I mean, next level egregious. So, keep an eye on where he goes. If Krebs stays on a line with Paterka, though, at 5-on-5, he was the beneficiary of that. He's gotten a couple decent games in a row. He remains 2,500, playing 15 minutes. He's going to be out there in pretty much any situation for the Sabres. And if he's with Paterka and on the power play too, that's a perfectly fine punt to go elsewhere in this game. But anything else here before we move on to Washington, Detroit?
No, I mean, I fully agree with you on everything you're saying, but it is funny because if you are, again, if you're a Sabres fan or not, Sabres Twitter is just in love with this Krebs Paterka Benson line. They were just in love with, Middlestad Cousins Paterka. And in my opinion, it's just Paterka. And I don't understand how the coaching staff isn't giving him a better role because he creates offense. Maybe he's giving up too much defensively, and I don't really care about that for DFS purposes, but I definitely think that is a punt line to at least give a look at because it is unbelievably cheap. The minutes are the best in the world. The power play run is, Benson also wasn't on that second power play, so you could find better, but it is like minimum salary across the board. But we can move over to Washington and Detroit to keep this going. Let's start with where we want to start here. Let's start with Washington or Detroit.
Well, I mean, we know the Washington setup because they're playing right now. So assuming further injuries, blah blah blah. With no Oshie, they seem to be rolling out Strome, Ovechkin, and Tom Wilson. Worth keeping an eye on whether Wilson stays on that top power play or not all game, because obviously this line is fully correlated at 5-on-5 and on the power play. If so, and Dylan Strome at 5,100 has been like really, really good over his last 10 games. He's got good fantasy production. He also has really solid underlying results as far as his rate attempts, his expected goal output. All of that looks stellar for 5,100. I mean, Strome is a really, really strong play, even on a back-to-back on the road for Washington. And obviously, Ovechkin being 6,100 is, it's too cheap for a guy who's put on this planet to score goals and will be given every chance to score goals, such as empty net goals, as some of us learned that you can get bailed out by over the weekend. And Tom Wilson makes it even cheaper to full stack. So if Wilson's going, we know that he was a guy earlier this year who really had some juice that went away pretty quickly. So I'm interested to see how this rejuvenation on the top line treats him, or if he sort of gets traded out for a Patches or Mantha type. Yeah, that's the main spot in this game I'm interested in. Not really interested in punting with Washington depth or anything. So what are your thoughts here?
I mean, yeah, they just had a power play goal, and I saw the tweet after saying like Dylan Strome, like I think it's 5 straight games with a power play point or something like that. And I mean, he's just integral on moving the puck on the power play. They definitely flow it through him, and the price just is reflective of a guy that, I mean, he's like what, 1,000 cheaper than Shane Pinto in that game on Monday night, and it's like, again, he's just too cheap. So, like, if you're playing Washington, I think it's just obvious where you're going here. And it's not going to be very popular. They're pretty big underdogs. As I mentioned, they're plus 150. It's a 6.5, shaded pretty heavily towards that under. And I do think people like Detroit as a team more than I do. So I can definitely see it. Washington has won some GPPs in recent run. Maybe some people consider it. I don't know. I mean, do you think any ownership is going to be on Washington here?
No, I don't. I just think there's too many options, and on the back-to-back, I think it's more likely that like Patrick Kane gets ownership than Ovechkin, honestly, but we'll see. I just wanted to note that expected fantasy point wise over the last 10, he is 13th on this slate. Dylan Strome is, Ovechkin is 14th. Every player who is higher than them on this list is more expensive. So like, Matt Boldy on a per dollar basis is better. He's 6,300 up in the 16 mark, but Strome and OV being at 13 for their price tags is really, really strong for this slate. And so that's why I'm very interested in, basically going right back to that well. And of course, I'll update this after the Monday games and see where things stand. So with that, there is obviously reason to like Detroit. We know that their offense flows to a few guys. Those guys are now playing on the 5-on-5 line together. And, should there be a 5-on-3, their power play makes sense. But for the time being, their power play does not make sense at 5-on-4. Like, it just does not seem like they want to put Kane and Larkin together. So I'm not sure I'm interested in doing Kane to Brinkett Cider. But that is, I think, the best way to stack Detroit here without including, Michael Rasmussen or, David Perron or whoever sort of finds their way onto this, like the second power play, third line type role. I don't know. Detroit just sucks. Like, I really don't have interest in playing them, but is there anything here for you?
I mean, again, I watched some of that game, and they just didn't look good against Chicago. I mean, like, the numbers supported. They had 2.2 expected goals in that game against Chicago. Like, they were very uninspiring. Raymond looks like he's a player, but he's with no one. They've kind of just, I mean, like maybe for a shot prop or something, you could go that way, but not in a 12-game GPP. It's probably Kane, DeBrincat, Raymond. You're hoping for a blocks bonus. I'm just going to fade this one. No, thank you.
All right. Let's keep it going then with 12 games, Arizona and Montreal. With no Clayton Keller, I don't believe we saw any lines. I can quickly look into the Arizona situation a bit, but clearly with Keller on the shelf, everyone is incredibly inexpensive. You know, you were saying, oh, like let's run to the table and bet Montreal, and maybe that's right. You know, like clearly losing Keller is not good, but there is something to be said that this team is still going to have a reasonable total, and they will not have a single forward priced above $5,000 on this slate. So you can really get creative in how you're stacking elsewhere if you're plugging in a couple of just baseline values from this game. Someone who I'm really interested in, just it's mostly based on hope and vibes, is Matthias Michelli. He's a guy who earlier this season was absolutely taking over for this squad. And that went away. I mean, that literally his shot volume was like really solid, and then it just disappeared at some point in like January, and it never returned. And so, it's hard to say because this dude now has like 100 and something games in his NHL sample, and for 20 of them, he was an awesome fantasy asset. I wonder if, being the prospect he has with the pedigree he has, Calder finalist last year, yada yada, if that point production, maybe with no Keller, he sort of takes more of the offense onto his own stick. And for 3,600, I think that's a bet I'm willing to make. But I do think if I'm playing Michelli, I would like to stack him with someone like Bukestad or Kraus or maybe Sean Dursey if we get power play units or something like that. But in any case, that's like the one spot that I'm sort of interested in fleshing out further, and it might make my mix as like a mini stack type to fill in some higher end stacks elsewhere on the slate. So, any thoughts on Arizona before we cover the Canadians?
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, I was going to mention him as the guy I think takes over Keller's power play one spot. It could be, I mean, you could make a case for a couple guys, but we didn't see that in the game. We saw them go to Kerfoot with Hayton and Schmaltz. I think that's probably the most likely scenario there. We'll just got to keep an eye on it. But yeah, I like that Kraus, Vincelli, Bukestad situation. That definitely is solid. Very, very cheap, very correlated. And at worst, you're getting all power play too, which would all be correlated. And at best, maybe one pumps up to the top unit. I'm not sure if that really helps or hurts, honestly, in this type of environment. But again, something to keep an eye on for sure. Montreal is still not very good, even though I said I was going to bet them at plus 100. And I did that while you were doing the read, while they were talking about problem gambling. I was like, huh? But why don't we well, we could get over to Montreal as well. I mean, yeah, I think that line's going to move is why I bet it more than like not that Arizona couldn't get there. I just think that plus money on a team at home against a team with lost their, I think unequivocal best offensive player. On the other hand,
yeah,
Caulfield, and Suzuki, Slafkovsky.
Yeah, and just to cap off the Arizona stuff, there is, there's not a ton of underlying expected goal stuff for a team that's lost 12 straight games. The Arizona Coyotes have to turn it around here. So, it's mostly a bet against Montreal if you're trying to play some Arizona pieces. On the Montreal side, we do know where the offense comes from. So, is there anything beyond the top line that you're interested in, or is it just the top line for you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to put it on the top line for me. I could see it getting a little popular. It's not that expensive. It again, as you just mentioned, 12 straight losses for Arizona, and it's not because they're keeping the puck out of their own net. The goaltending completely fell off, which was very much expected. Yeah, Matheson 6,500. That's pricey. That's one thing that is going to be left off pretty commonly because he's just not worth that price tag. Yeah, I like it. It's again to me, it feels like it's priced correctly for it's priced correctly. Is it going to be too owned? That's what's going to be the stumbling block for me. Not that it isn't a good play. It's just, is it a good enough play if people actually do go to it? Nick Suzuki's been, as you're just showing, I mean, he's actually been shooting and been good. It's not just like, oh, wow, this Nick Suzuki guy is getting lucky because he plays with Cole Caulfield. Like, he actually probably makes Cole Caulfield a much better player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's inarguable that Suzuki's a good quality NHL player. Slafkovsky really does seem to be rounding into form. I mean, just everything you look at, this dude is really popping off. So Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a $25,000 stack for a four-man stack that is going to play a ton of minutes in a fabulous matchup. A 12-game slate, I really don't think ownership matters that much. So they're in the mix. I mean, Caulfield has really turned it up as of late as well. He was a little bit sketchy there for a little bit as far as his underlying shot attempts. But those are really high over the last little run. That line producing a ton. They've got the best expected goals for numbers on the team. They've got the best goals for numbers on the team. Um, and yeah, I mean, Arizona is absolute sieve defensively and in goal. So I have nothing else to really say about this. If you want to get real sneaky, like the Alex Newhook stuff seems like it'll still be in play. He's not done anything with it, and I don't really think it's worth the I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze here. But if you need a center spot filled and you can't use Suzuki, I would be okay with trying to replace him with a new hook or something, just to try and change things up a bit. He should play a bunch of minutes. This team still has no center depth to speak of. So you're getting a bit of an out to the 6,100 Suzuki, and you're hoping, hey, the first line smashes, but Suzuki has one shot on goal, he has 2 assists, and New Hook puts up 15 and makes that better than Suzuki's 11 plus what that allows you to do elsewhere. So I've got nothing else here. Anything else before we move to Tampa and Philly?
It is so eerily similar, this stack, to Washington, only just slightly more correlation. We don't know about Tom Wilson top power play yet, and I just think it's just like just the hair better. So I like those two. But yeah, let's get over to Tampa and Philly. A low total, as I already mentioned. Tampa doesn't really seem that hard. Like, they finally put Hagel with Kucherov and Point, and Hagel's been world beating. It made a ton of sense that was going to get there on Sunday. I know you had it yourself, and I don't know if there's anything else in this game I'm really all that interested in. I know Owen Tippett is, I believe, the 9.6 shot attempts per game over the last 5. That's fantastic. On the other side, if you did want to do something, a little bit goofy like that, he has 2 10 shot on goal games in his last 5. So we know it's there, and Tampa can give up shots against. It's not like they're impervious to it, especially without guys like Sergachev in the lineup. But this game is awfully expensive for the total. That all to say, again, I'm not incredibly interested here, but I do think, again, you are going to be getting what I believe is the best lineup for Tampa, about line 1, in a very low ownership situation.
Yeah. The expected goals aren't anything crazy, but if you like actual goals and you like 5-on-5 production, which is not to say, the Kucherov power play magic on top of that, this game does have the highest goal pace. Just these two teams combined over the last 10 games are scoring a lot and they're giving up a lot. There's emphasis on the latter for sure, which does make this a pretty appealing spot. Nikita Kucherov, 9,800. Of course, you need to compare him not to the rest of this game, but more toward Nathan McKinnon and Austin Matthews. And frankly, I think I prefer Kucherov. So even though the expected goals don't look crazy here, I am sort of interested in Kucherov and Tippett and just sort of building around some cheaper options that we get, especially if Konechny misses. I mean, if Konechny doesn't play, Tyson Forster seems locked into the role that he's been playing, which is really, let me just pull up his game logs here. But Tyson Forster, over the last 2 games, he returned from injury and has been monstrously productive. And more importantly, he's been playing 20 minutes in each of these games. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me at 3,500 in Tyson Forster. If Konechny misses, he's almost locked in for me personally. And I do think it makes sense to build around him and Tippett and, maybe run it back with Kucherov and, maybe Hagel even, because Hagel is on a 13-game point streak, which I could not believe. But this is the longest point streak since Steven Stamkos. Nikita Kucherov has never gone on a 13-game point streak. I don't really know what to say about that, but like that just goes to show how impressive Hagel has been, because almost all of this is coming at 5-on-5. And until recently, almost all of this was coming without the benefit of being glued to Nikita Kucherov's hip. The underlines are there to support Brandon Hagel. So I really do think that this game is ripe for game stacking. Just keep an eye on Travis Konechny news, and also keep an eye out for who the Philly top power play guy will be. I believe Jamie Drysdale is done. Hurt his shoulder. Uh, it looked exactly like what you would expect a season-ending shoulder injury to look like, and we've seen it multiple times with this guy now, sadly. So I do think it's going to be either Cam York or Travis Sanheim manning the point, or maybe Sean Walker, and they'll try and boost his, trade deadline appeal. So there could be some hidden value on the blue line, but otherwise, a lot to like here. News to track, but yeah. And anything you want to add to that?
Two notes just from Tampa's last game. Number one, as you kind of alluded to, Hagel wasn't on the top power play, but did get some run with Kucherov and others. I think I don't know. I mean, I think just like Kucherov doesn't come off the ice, but he had 24 minutes, Hagel, and including penalty kill time and stuff. So it's not like he wasn't getting run. And number two, of all 4 goals they had, all were at 5-on-5, and all of them were while Victor Hedman was on the ice. We didn't say his name, but at 5,900, I think you could do worse than a guy like Victor Hedman, who is getting 25, 26 to 30 minutes in some games, blocking shots, shooting the puck, and just, of course, if he have had four opportunities to was on the edge for 4 goals, and Kucherov had 4 points, it kind of leads you back to the reality that they must be putting them out there together for some reason. So I do think it's pretty obvious that you're stacking correctly. Kind of reminds me of like Cale Makar with McKinnon and stuff. There's a reason they're trying to do that on purpose. So we can move on. You covered Philly really well. We can get over to Vegas and Toronto if you're ready.
Yes, certainly. And yeah, the Victor Hedman with Kucherov and Hagel is a very intentional decision, and it's exacerbated by Tampa going 11-7. So basically it's,
Yeah.
Hedman, you go out every time Kucherov goes out, and we'll just throw whoever else out there with you. So really there's no like cheap D that you can stack, but you can certainly play Hedman and be confident that he will highly correlate with the Kucherov line. So next up, we have Toronto and Vegas. This is a rematch of the absolute walloping Toronto gave Vegas, I think Friday. And this comes with Vegas in a bit of a tailspin. All their underlyings are getting progressively worse. They're without Mark Stone. They're without Jack Eichel. We seem to be close on a Jack Eichel return, but it seems like they have Saturday in Buffalo penciled in as like the first possible return date, with obviously after that being in the cards as well. So we're dealing with a pretty bare bones Vegas squad. We do have Shea Theodore back. I'm very proud to announce that I got more Shea Theodore through than I even drafted. I have 42% Shea Theodore in best puck. Just incredible job by me drafting just an elite defenseman who just happened to miss 50 games or whatever. Who cares? Not a big deal. Still managed to squeak him through. So now it's time for the Shea Theodore show to roll into Toronto. DJ, any thoughts on who you'd want to play Shea Theodore with on the Vegas side before we tackle the Toronto situation?
Yeah, I mean, most of things change. Last game, it was William Karlsson, Marchessault, Brisson as a line. Karlsson and Marchessault on that top power play. It did look like the funneling of the puck was through Theodore and Karlsson through Marchessault, Stephenson, and Amadio was kind of playing bumper. That also means that the other line had Stephenson and Amadio, but I just don't think I'm gonna, like, if I'm punting it off and playing guys like Stephenson and Amadio, I mean, I guess I get Amadio as a one-off at 3,100, like power play 1, etc. But I think if I'm actually playing Vegas, I'm just going to go with what I assume not many people will play in Marchessault, Theodore, and Karlsson. Just go all the way, because it really isn't that expensive on its own. Like 5,400 for William Karlsson, I think is totally justifiable. He's been really good, and he is in power play, so I would consider that. Again, like, it's what the same. It's got to be cheaper than playing Montreal 1, especially if you throw on minimum salary per son, which is probably fine. Like, it is really cheap, and I don't like the matchup. Like, I do respect Toronto a ton, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get there. But it is like my point being, like, I think all the upside in this game is there. You could one off Amadio if you'd like, but going like Stephenson, Amadio, Theodore just feels like you just set up a lineup that is just clearly not going to win a GPP. So yeah, I would just myself trying to win a GPP if you're gonna play.
Yep, that certainly worries me as well. Carlson, I think is a okay like one-off play if you can't afford Marchessault and you want to stack with Theodore, or even if you just want to use the center slot. I don't see a ton at 5,400 if you're not trying to one-off like a chalky Suzuki or a chalky Dylan Strome. There's not really a ton in the mid fives that I love, so that's like totally fine. I think William Karlsson. We're finding that center is getting progressively worse, in my opinion, as the season goes on, and these guys get priced up and whatnot. So that's how I would do Vegas, but ultimately it just means that Shea Theodore is very much in play. He's had one smash game in his three, so just whatever. It's obviously my own thing, but I'm certainly interested there. For Toronto, it does seem like Tyler Bertuzzi has just straight up usurped John Tavares on the top power play. He's 3,700. He's coming off a hat trick with 2 power play goals. I don't know. Does ownership actually come in on him? I guess,
No.
but there's a lot of good cheap options here. So Bertuzzi, I guess, maybe chief among them, though there are, again, less expensive options. But I guess playing with William Nylander, you could see Nylander get priced up, or I guess more owned as a result of having Bertuzzi there. But yeah, John Tavares, third line, Nick Robertson, Bobby McMahon, top line, Nyes, Matthews, Marner. It just doesn't feel like a spot that I'm really willing to get hurt on because of these high level prices. And I don't know. What are your thoughts here? Because I just can't get out of my head that this Vegas team is not as bad as their underlyings and that the results have been.
I think that's very fair. I mean, they are back to like 100% on defense. Pietrangelo, Theodore, McNabb, Haig, Martinez, Whitecloud. That sounds like the optimal for them. And I obviously it's the depth on this team that is the concern. I mean, they've had to promote guys like Colasar and Cotter and guys I've barely even heard of, and like Rosie and Morelli.
Sure.
And like these guys are actually having to play. Like the concern is that the depth can't keep up. I don't think it's that, Stephenson can't play defense against, a top line in Toronto. So I think I'm out more so. I think they could limit Toronto's upside enough. And I mean, you're playing Austin Matthews at 10K. I don't really think I'm going another route on that. And you could obviously still play Bertuzzi with it because Matthews gets there through the power play, and Bertuzzi's on that power play. Like I don't think that they're just because they're not correlated at 5-on-5, you couldn't do it. Like I'm playing him over Nyes probably. Just pretty obvious. I don't think that's actually that much of a debate. Like that's the only thing I'm interested in here, and I just don't know if I'm spending all of my cap on it. And I think Vegas, like you're saying, is just going to continue to get progressively better at these underlying numbers quickly, and I don't want to be on the wrong side of that.
Yeah. Okay. So Carolina, Minnesota. I mean, this game feels like an easy X out.
Yep.
But the problem is, DraftKings refuses to price Matt Boldy as the absolute world beater that he's been playing as, alongside Kirill Kaprizov. Keeping an eye on Joel Eriksson-Ek's injury is paramount to this. I think to this play, because frankly, if it's Ryan Hartman or Marco Rossi on the top line, I can't say I'm less interested because of the fact that they're just so much cheaper and Matt Boldy is still a value and whatever else. But I kind of feel like if Eriksson Ek plays, this line will be 2% owned yet again. And like it probably will be somewhat owned if if they get a cheap Rossi or a cheap Hartman to sort of replace Eriksson Ek, including the power play role that we would assume gets replaced somehow as well. So that's basically me saying I think ownership comes in really low on a Minnesota line. That's the team doesn't need to be good. I mean, their 3 best players are playing together, and they've been absolutely elite. We're talking Kaprizov and Boldy having 2 of the 3 highest expected fantasy point outputs. And if I unhide these columns, actually, No, I don't think it'll work because I'm on the I have a pod and a main set up. On the main slate, I can change this to actuals, and obviously with a 60 burger in there for both for Kaprizov especially, that number is also going to be very high. The actual fantasy output. So basically, it's like yeah, the matchup stinks because Carolina's really good, but we've seen Minnesota go absolute buzzsaw through anyone because these three guys are really really good. So can you back me on saying Minnesota 1 equals good, or are you just like, nope, it's Carolina, maybe Nachas and move on?
Well, I mean, I again, if you're saying that the ownership is 2% on that full line one, I think they win the slate more often than 2%. So I think it's a fine play. Is it 10%? No. Is it 4 or 5%? Probably. But even at that, I do think it's a good game theory strategy. Like I think if anyone has the stones to play Minnesota 1 altogether, I have to applaud you. And I honestly think that, like you're alluding to, well, what if now they move Rossi into that spot? Well, he's not going to have the top power play. Hartman was on the top power play over, it seems like anyone else. So maybe if it's Hartman, then maybe you could convince me that it's not 100 miles worse. But it's worse. Like their upside's lower now. Their ownership's higher now. I think I'd rather just stick with what you're saying. I don't have a lot of interest on the other side of things either. If anything, I'm going back to Drury Bunting Nachos. I've said it that that's what I'm playing if I'm playing it. I think that's their best 5-on-5 line right now, and I think that Nachos should just unequivocally be on the top power play in some capacity, and he isn't. But all three of these guys are at least on a power play, and they really don't have an unbelievably strong preference between the two. Like I do think the Aho unit's going to get the first run most of the time, but it's not to an unbelievable degree. Like they're definitely using both of them. So.
Yeah.
That's it for me, though. That's it for this game. Is maybe I consider it in the game theory aspect. I tried to sound smart there, Matt, and I feel like I did a good job. What do you think?
Yeah, and we see great job, DJ. Pat on the back for you. We see Michael Bunting make his way into the values list as well. I mean, he's got the role you would want, so I could totally see myself going with Nachas and Bunting, especially if Eriksson is out. I mean, again, that's a huge issue defensively as well because you're asking Marco Rossi and Ryan Hartman to play top 6 center minutes. So yeah, we've seen this team fall apart without Eriksson like in the playoffs. So he's been integral to this team's success at both ends of the ice. So I think it's a very interesting spot to monitor because nothing in this game should be that popular. Otherwise, we saw some interesting stuff defensively. Last game, Tony DeAngelo drew into the lineup, scored almost right away. Got up to 16 minutes, 2,700. Tony DeAngelo. They just lost to the Sabres. We are reaching peak. It's about time to get Brent Burns off the top power play time, in my estimation. And 2,700 again. If you're playing one lineup, I don't know. It's probably not a good effort. But if you're playing 150 or whatever, and you want to mix in some Tony D, 2,700 is totally too cheap because this is a rare guy who can put up 25, and you would not be that surprised as a defenseman. So
Yeah, he didn't.
yeah.
He didn't even get power play 2 run though. I mean, I
No, I
don't
know.
understand. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Like that is what he is good for. Like he is a very good offensive defenseman. And it seems like they have a need for it, and they just aren't playing him. That is what it is. I'm ready to move over Ottawa, Nashville if you are though.
Yes. So Ottawa playing right now. The first period ended. The score is 4-2.
4-2. I saw.
Washington is winning. It's been all depth idiots minus the power play goal I think you mentioned already. And there's been 20 total shots. So, this is, total crisis of goaltending. We look at the slate and we see also the underlines, the expected goals. These are two of the top 4 matchups on the slate based on those. So you got to think that this game is at least an interesting target. Maybe ownership, whatever, doesn't quite get there because of the prices and how spread out Ottawa is. But let's unpack things because unless we see 42, I don't know. Maybe everything goes in the blender, but it seems like the Kachuk line is working right now with Pinto, Kachuk, and is it? It's not.
It was Batherson.
No, I'm blanking. Was it Batherson?
I mean, he scored on that line. So,
I
and then it
don't
was
think so.
Stützle, Giroux, Joseph. And then it was.
I think Batherson was with
And
Norris to
Tarasenko
start.
was there to.
Yes. Tarasenko should be there. We don't know, obviously. Yeah.
Things aren't working
in any
so
case.
well.
Well, yeah. I don't know. Anyway, we got to keep an eye on lines here because obviously whoever's playing with Brady Tkachuk is probably among the best forwards on the team, just like projection wise, just because Brady Tkachuk is very good. Pricing wise, Brady Tkachuk 7,600. You're kind of relying on like a bonus and multi-point effort from him, so he's an okay one-off, I suppose. But because there's options that are cheaper, like Batherson or Tarasenko or even Stützle and Norris, like if Pinto gets shaken up, like it's clear that there could be some interesting twists, especially if we don't get lines until 7:30 warmups post lock. In that, I guess my take is let's see what Brady Tkachuk's doing. If you want to make room for him, it totally makes sense. But I'm not rushing to get any of these guys in. I mean, like there's really nothing in a 12 game slate on a back to back on the road that I'm like, yeah, I want to play Ottawa. Like, come on. So
I mean, the only reason that, again, I do think it's kind of funny. It's like we talked about this earlier, where I'm like, I think Ottawa is better than their record indicates. It doesn't make them good, and I also think Nashville is like bad enough defensively that I could see why it makes sense. This kind of feels like one of those situations where I talk myself off of a good play in Ottawa just because it's hard. I do think it's a good play, like I really do, but it's hard because there's 3 lines. I do think that I might end up just running a few lineups, and one of them is just going to be decided at 7:30 when I leave room for the best I can for Ottawa, and bring it back with Nashville. Like I would love to game stack this, just Yossi, Forsberg, and then a couple guys on Ottawa, maybe 2, maybe 3, likely through Brady. And then at that point, I'm just going to be punting. And there's plenty of options to punt. Like I don't think this slate is lacking in that. So I do think that's a good build idea. And I just don't want to like make it sound like I don't think Ottawa is a good play, because I definitely am in on it. It's just hard.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't really get easier going to Nashville because obviously the top line's the top line; they're the best plays. But we look at the values, and there are literally 4 values that stand out on the Nashville side. In terms of, I mean, Forsberg at 8,100 is probably a little cheap for how Ottawa's faring at this point in time. We have Cody Glass, who some of this comes on the top power play, of course, but like he's coming off a game of 5 block shots last game. Like I don't know. Like he's gonna get some ownership because even if power play 2, he's got good enough rates to look appealing. Colton Sissons, his line mate, is on the top power play. We've got Ryan McDonough, who's picking up power play 2 time, absolutely just chucking muffins from the point, blocking a billion shots a game. I mean, we're talking about a team coming off of a very impressive road trip. They beat St. Louis, Vegas, LA, San Jose, and Anaheim, all in regulation. I mean, this is a really good run for this squad. Now they're back home against a reeling Ottawa team, apparently just giving up 4 goals to absolute nobodies on the Washington Capitals. There's like 4 lines you could play in Nashville, and I would be like, yeah, that makes sense. And so it doesn't really feel good. I will say that. So I think I'm most interested in trying to go like just McDonough and I don't know, like Luke Evangelista or something, and just full punting. That's not to say I don't trust the top line. It's just I think the other top lines on this slate I like a bit more.
Yeah, I mean they have guys. I mean, you didn't say Tommy Novak, but again, we remember Tommy Novak last year because every slate, like, these are the games. These are the Tommy Novak 2-shot, 2-goal games. I mean, I'm not planning on playing it, but like this guy is getting enough power play run. Like it was basically Yossi Forsberg with O'Reilly as much as possible, Nyquist as much as possible, Sissons, Glass, Evangelista, Novak, kind of just, and like you could realistically say that neither of Yossi or Forsberg could get there if it's because the other guys score on the power play and at 5-on-5. Like I think I like that Novak Evangelista pairing enough to give it a good hard look,
Yeah.
For sure. And on the other hand, I could look at Sissons and Glass. I think I'm not playing McCarron, Sherwood, or Smith, but if that's something that tickles your fancy, a guy that's like 6'8" and McCarron, then you know what? If you're going off the height train, go for it. But yeah, I think there are some nice. Again, there's a lot of good punts on this slate. Some of them are just Nashville, so maybe you're not going to go too crazy, but yeah, I do like that call out a lot.
All right. So next up we have Winnipeg and St. Louis. Winnipeg's matchup looks pretty good. St. Louis, though, is getting back Justin Falk for this one. We think. I mean, it's not confirmed, but they seemed pretty optimistic that he would return. And obviously, Justin Falk matters to a team's defensive, structure. What also matters is that when we're talking about St. Louis, I mean, they are going to be on the road here, so Winnipeg can dictate matchups. But I mean, St. Louis's top line is just actively good. So there is some okay, maybe there's a bit of oh yeah, St. Louis is not a great matchup. The total's 5.5. I mean, Winnipeg's not going to project super well. They're coming off a smash where Mark Scheifele, I believe, had 4 points. No, I don't know. Mark Scheifele did Mark Scheifele things. And St. Louis does not look good at all. So first off, anything on St. Louis interests you? I know our Justin Falk best ball bags were pretty packed, but there's really nothing here that I can see as being warranted with guys like, what's his face? Zach Bolduc or anything like that. Like, I don't think there's anything here, even at 2,500. But anything for you on St. Louis first?
I mean, it's the lowest total on the slate. This is the St. Louis team that absolutely got eviscerated by the Red Wings last time out. I'm always pretty low on this St. Louis team. But again, within the past week, they did win a GPP against the Islanders. I'm not going to do it for sure. Like, I don't want that to come through as like, oh, well, maybe they can win a GPP, because I think that it's very, very infrequently. Like, they're just such an efficiency-driven team. And against Winnipeg, I absolutely don't trust it. Not even just because I think Winnipeg has very good goaltending, which they definitely do, no matter who starts. I don't care. But the reason that goaltending is so good is because of how good they are defensively at limiting dangerous chances, which would be necessary for an efficiency team to get there. So it's a no for me. It's a 5.5 for a reason. And it's not quite cheap. I mean, like, it's not expensive to stack St. Louis, but it's just as expensive as Montreal, for example. So no, I'd rather play Montreal.
Okay, so Winnipeg. I mean, we are dealing with the question mark of Mark Scheifele or Sean Monahan. I don't really think it matters if Monahan plays or doesn't play. Like, I still think it's just the top line that you're mostly interested in.
Sure.
The depth, the Lowry line is likely to eat the Thomas matchup, so there's really no interest there. Can we get to 8K Kyle Connor, 5,300 Gabe Vilardi, and 6,200 Mark Scheifele?
I don't think I can personally. Vilardi makes it doable. Like, he is underpriced right there, and for sure he's so incredibly good. And I mean, he really is incredibly useful on that top power play. Like, the puck definitely flows through Morrissey and Kyle Connor as much as possible, but Vilardi can absolutely play. And
yeah,
Kyle Connor right now in the last 5, only 5 shot attempts per game is just way too low for me to want to jump on that price in a game that I already mentioned I don't love. So yeah, I think I'm going to stay away from it overall. And again, it just doesn't feel like the upside play at that price, but I do love Vilardi.
Vilardi since the break. 1.3, 1.5, 0, 3, 32, 16, 32, 7, 20. So, he's on a bit of a heater. He's a very hit or miss guy. For me, the thing with Vilardi is that I don't think you're playing without Kyle Connor. I honestly don't think you're playing without Mark Scheifele either. Again, the slate just sets up in a way that center is kind of weak, especially if you can't afford McKinnon, Matthews, those guys. And I just don't really want to play that line into, a 5.5 total against a team who I think is going to be on the upswing. I mean, St. Louis was playing better. They're getting Justin Falk back. I think that game was a bit of an aberration. So in Detroit. So anything else before we head to LA Calgary and do the final 4 of this slate?
No, I mean, again, just for the betting people, Velarde is going to be like minus 135 for a point tomorrow. You could just probably bet that and hedge when Winnipeg smashes pretty easily. Let's get over LA back to back against the Flames.
Yeah, I got to say this game is very unappealing to me.
Yeah.
It does
Yep.
seem like we're going to get Brant Clark not playing on Monday. I would imagine that carries into Tuesday as well. That makes the Kings worse. Their defense is already pretty bad. I mean, they have Jordan Spence, Moravari, Gavrikov. I mean, Mikey Anderson wasn't any good, but Englund's the worst player in the league, and these three guys also suck. Matt Roy had a 10-shot, 3-block game against Anaheim. No, thank you. This team is just, I don't know. They're too expensive for what they're currently doing. They're on a back-to-back. They're on the road. Calgary's bad, but they're not that bad. So for me, it's look at Calgary, maybe see if Clark plays. If not, just move on to other games. So anything on LA or Calgary for you?
I mean, it is. It kind of feels like Calgary is just Ottawa with extra steps. Like it almost feels eerily similar. And it's probably just a worse matchup than Nashville. And it just is. It just is a worse matchup. So I'm going to stay away from it. I think it's even harder to like actually look at the Flames and say, yeah, that's the right answer. It's this. Now we did get Pospisil on the top power play with Kadri, which I found incredibly odd. So I guess that helps a
Here's
little
the
bit
question.
to find it. Yeah.
Here's a question: is it the top power play?
It really well. I mean, the thing is it was until Hannafin had a chance for a hat trick, and then they're just like run up power play too. So the whole last power play they had to get there towards the end of the game was just Hannafin. So I think it did inflate it a bit. But I still think the argument is valid because Zari and Backlund are still really good. But yeah, no, I mean, again, I have no idea. Like Huberdeau, Sharon Govich, and Hunt. I mean, again, but Kuzmenko missed, right? Did he miss?
Kuzmenko missed due to illness, and he practiced on Monday, but did not skate in line rushes. So we're expecting him to miss this game as well, whether it be a healthy scratch or otherwise. We're not expecting Kuzmenko to play here. We thought Peltier was going to be on the top line, but it wound up being Dryden Hunt. That's not interesting whatsoever. Nope. So, it's more of the same. Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane have the underlying stuff that you would want. They have the minutes, but they're not particularly talented. And then we have Nazem Kadri with two line mates who are in a better role because of the Kuzmenko absence. But we know that Kadri is going to take a lot of the offense onto himself. So I think that for me is the decision. I lean slightly toward Kadri just because Zari Pospisil should be on a power play unit, but I don't have strong feelings about this game. I'm mostly just skipping.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll just look at the other side. I am at least interested to see if it is Dubois with Byfield and Kaliev. I mean, I am going to give it a look for sure. The Flames can give up goals. That is something that they're very okay with doing. And Dubois has been good. Byfield is very good. And I think Arthur Kaliev with those two could be at least a player at 2,800 that I could conceive of playing with his shot rates over time and his finishing ability that obviously exists. So there is a nice little value in this game if that's something you're interested in.
All right. Let's keep moving into Colorado hosting Dallas. Dallas on a back-to-back here. They are playing in Dallas right now. Yep. So yeah, traveling to the altitude. I mean, without Tyler Seguin, Dallas is going with Stankoven, with Johnston and Jamie Benn. They're moving Delandria to the Seguin spot on the second line. And then the top line remains Pavelski with Robertson and Hintz. So anything interest you here before we get to Colorado news?
No, I'm not entirely. I mean, I think I don't think I'm going to go to a back-to-back Dallas team. I definitely understand why you would consider it, but Colorado at home should have enough of an opportunity to match up against the top line in Dallas. And we could talk about a couple punts here, but I mean, are you really going to play Stankoven? Like, is that?
I
You
don't think
could,
so.
but I'm
Yeah.
not. Yeah, I don't think so.
Um,
Yeah.
there's So the main reason he's in play is because he's the center. Again,
Yeah.
I think that center's kind of weak relative to wing. So if you wind up needing to punt a center spot, he's 3K. He's not 2,500, which is meaningful. But this dude is absolutely everything that you would want in a like in a prospect, I guess is the word we should be using. But he does seem like a player who is ready to go. Like he absolutely ripped up the AHL this season. Last year, he was unbelievable in the WHL. He was an overager, so like that matters. But even for an overager, very similar to Bolduc, he absolutely smashed the CHL. Um, and to a greater extent than Bolduc did, I should say. So Stankoven is here. It seems like it's his time. But in this matchup on a back to back, I don't really think it's time. So you kind of got to be a prospect believer to jam him here, in my estimation, unless there's some crazy line change. If he goes to line one, all bets are off. Just play him. Like who cares? But otherwise,
Life is too short.
yeah. Otherwise, I didn't play Heiskanen and Harley on Monday night, so when they both combine for 50 DraftKings points, I will be inconsolable. And on the Colorado side, we did get Arturi Lehkonen on the top line with Rantanen and McKinnon. So Lehkonen 5,100, I think, is a great play. I don't think you need to play his guys with him. Of course, you can. They correlate really well now. But that's more of just saying Lehkonen gets 2 goals because guess what? If McKinnon gets 25, you're not going to be put away by McKinnon at 10.2 getting 25 points. You just need Lehkonen to get his 20 to 25 to really be in contention with him as a one-off. That's my opinion, but I really like Lehkonen here. So any thoughts on Colorado?
The sports books will not adjust to Lekkonen's role very quickly, so keep an eye on it tomorrow. I'll try to point it out, but definitely, that's a great point prop. He's going to be like minus 145 or whatever, and he's been doing it without McKinnon and Rantanen to an extent. So, yeah, I'm in on that. I think if you know me, to want to try to continue to chase Cale Makar. Maybe he finally got a point against Toronto. He has hit back-to-back blocks bonuses, but he hasn't even been close to anywhere near optimal since the beginning of February. So spend a minute. I could conceive of playing him again. Just maybe excluding Rantanen, which makes me sick to my stomach. I don't know. I'm considering it. I like the matchup, but we can move over to Pittsburgh and Vancouver. I don't have to really stress on it too much.
Yeah. So Pittsburgh and Vancouver, the main note here is that without Rust and without Gensel, it seems like the top line is going to be Crosby with Riley Smith and Raquel. That really nukes the rest of the lineup. I got to say, if there's a way we can figure out who the Vancouver matchup is going to be, like, is it, I honestly can't think if JT Miller or Pedersen matches up with Sid, but that other line who gets to match up with Malkin and whatever's left, that's kind of appealing to me because this Pittsburgh team is in really dire straits. Emil Bemstrom could get a bigger role. He scored on the power play on Sunday, but it wasn't like a crazy, wasn't like a crazy goal or anything. It was just one of those fluky goals. But he could get on a run 2,700. He's going to get more ice time than he ever has, in my opinion. So that's the one punt that I'm keeping an eye on with Pittsburgh's current situation. But really, this really hurts them. Sid's great, but Rust and Gensel are truly play drivers, and without them, I think there's going to be some struggles. So, any interest in attacking either side of this game?
It would have to be Vancouver. I don't think I'm going to do it, but it would just like, yeah, I'm not interested. How do you play? Nah, I really can't even think of like a scenario of how I'm getting to Pittsburgh. It just feels like you're just setting yourself up for failure. And I know there's going to be a punt here that you could consider, but there's no need. Vancouver, I really don't think I'm going to do it, but What's the pricing on it? I'm trying to pull up a couple things while I.
It's cheap.
It's not
Like
that,
that's your
yeah.
6,200 is awfully interesting.
Yeah,
JT
yeah.
Miller 7K. Like, I mean, these dudes are smashing up, down, left, and right, and they just don't seem to be priced like it. So
Brings
I
me
gotta say, I'm
no
pretty
joy
interested.
to report that Quinn Hughes could also be back.
Mm,
I mean,
Okay.
is the one game against Boston just got to take that one out of the equation? But I mean, he has 8 shot
I mean,
attempts per game over the last 5, and we know what he can do. He's 70 points in 60 games. I mean, he's overpriced. Like, I mean, again, like I don't think it's. I just think if you're stacking Vancouver, you could definitely you could consider it for sure. Like if Brock Besser's
yeah.
getting there, it's probably because Quinn Hughes is feeding him the buck on the power play. And if he gets 2
Yep.
points and hits either bonus, like you're absolutely cooked. I mean, that you're
All
going to
right.
be just at swimming.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like it's whichever the top 2 lines doesn't get the said line is the one I'm interested in. So we'll do some more reconnaissance and then check back in the Discord. New Jersey, San Jose, the final game of the night. New Jersey, as you mentioned, are absolutely just flailing. Do we have lines from a practice? I don't think we
Well,
would
they
have
they played
practice.
yesterday, and then they flew out to San Jose, so I don't believe they did. I mean, they got pretty badly bullied.
Yeah,
They did make
that's
some
fair.
changes, like Paolo was back with Hughes and Foley by the end of the game, but that didn't work. I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I think the power
honestly,
play stays, but yeah,
yeah, I mean the power play is probably just where you want to play this through. But I honestly think there's really no point in guessing what they're gonna do because guess what? If they struggle for the first period, it's just gonna change anyway. So
yep, yeah.
Jack Hughes, you can one off him, you can stack him, you can play him with Heischer, you can play 6 New Jersey Devils. I I think this game is just has such a large range of outcomes that if ownership seems like they'll be one of the highest owned teams, I'm just comfortable saying, you know what? They can score 6 on San Jose and still not get there because Timo Meyer scores a hat trick after getting benched. Like, I mean, there's just so much nonsense that could go on still. But yeah, I mean, is there anything that you're really keying in on here?
You already said it. Timo Meyer revenge game. How
Yeah, and
you're
he
just gonna
sucks. Like,
and they're gonna bench him, but
yeah, he's one, he sucks. Two, he's gonna get benched. Okay, great. We solved it. Now let's figure it out.
he can't get embarrassed in his old home. I mean,
Trust me,
unfortunately.
he's been embarrassed plenty this season. Don't worry.
Oh my god. I mean, he starts out there with Heishier and Brett, and I'm like, finally, this is the game. I don't know because he was not out there for a single goal against the entire game. I don't know what he did. Like, did he come back to the bench and just twap Lindy Rupp in the balls? Like nothing. He had 2 shots on goal. He looked dangerous in the first period, and they're just like, no, that's over. We got to lose 4-1. We can't be having this garbage.
Yeah,
I don't understand it at all. Lindy
yeah,
Rupp, unfortunately, is just time has passed him. Um, I
yep.
think though, if you are stacking the Devils, I am once again going to just very sadly put in the 7 points of Luke Hughes and then shake my fist when they have 6 goals and he only has 7.6 fantasy points again. But unfortunately for me, I'm just going to continue to go back to the same well, come up completely dry. This guy hasn't had over 10 fantasy points since the 17th of January. And I just don't care. He absolutely should be hitting way more. And I think people are just going to exclude him because of how bad the run's been when, like you're saying, the range of outcomes are ridiculous in this game. If not Tampa, Jesus, if New Jersey just absolutely goes insane on the power play, which is really where the offense is going to have to come from, he is very involved. I don't care. I'm going to do it. And that's that.
Have fun. You're on your own,
Thank you.
bud. Have fun. San Jose.
Awesome.
I just am. I have the note that William Eklund is playing out of his mind right now. He
He's
looks
good. Yeah, he's
awesome
good.
up and down the ice. His game logs aren't that inspiring, but the underlyings are there. Like the price is, I mean, he's going to be unowned, and obviously, if you want to play like Phil Zadina with him or something, like feel free. But yeah, just Eklund is great, and we like Eklund here. So again, New Jersey stinks as well. They're not managed properly, so I don't hate getting a little schmeckle of San Jose action in. So let's do guaranteed goal or top 6 guaranteed goals. Get out of here.
Okay. Yep, not even going to mention Zetterlund revenge narrative. Perfect. Let's
Who cares?
Perfect. Top stacks, Garrett. You want to go first tonight? I feel like I've gone first like the best 3 podcasts.
I genuinely have no freaking clue who goes first, last, whenever. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Tampa. Nothing really has me scared of the Kucherov price tag. And I like the fact that I can literally game stack this up with the Tyson Forster and or Owen Tippett. So give me Kucherov, Hagel, and Hedman.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with Montreal, Suzuki, Slafkovsky, Caulfield. I mean, if you throw Matheson in there, you throw Matheson in there. I get it for sure. I think again, we're talking like, let's just say for like a third of the ownership of the rest of those guys, somewhere in that range. He's not deserving of his price, but alas, if they break the slate wide open, he could get there.
All right. I like that. Let's do the Vancouver second line. JT
Yep.
Miller, Brock Besser, and whoever. I don't even know who it'll be. Don't really care. You can just play the 2-man, which is probably what I'll wind up doing because I don't want to dig into Vancouver depth with so many good options on the slate depth wise. So these guys are just in an awesome spot. I believe that the Penguins are just in a world of hurt here without their guys. So yeah, what do you got?
I think what I'm going to end up doing is this is kind of going to be like a kind of a 2-stack combination here of I'm going to end up with like the Novak Evangelista, maybe McDonough, but I might not need it. Can I play McKinnon and the car? I don't think so. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
No. Maybe I just end up with. I'll just for now. I'll just do like Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes and maybe second one more guy. Then just again getting a bit different with how I'm kind of approaching these builds because you could. I don't think people are going to do it this way. I'm just going to keep it with that, like a little 2 and 2, and I'm going to kind of debate between the other high price one. But again, Montreal one with like a Novak Evangelista, and then one of the others mixed in. I mean, I could even do like Byram and McKinnon or something like that, or just do McKinnon and then kind of stack in like McDonough and an upper price defenseman like Matheson. Like there's a lot of different ways to play with it from there.
Okay. So there's stacks. Guarantee goals. I have my 2 ready. I do want to get out of here. So let's do Matt Boldy and Tom Wilson for me. Washington has scored their 6th goal of the game with no involvement from Wilson and Ovi. However, if they win, I don't think the lines will change. So hey, Tom Wilson finally gets on the board here on Tuesday night. So give me Tom Wilson and Matt Boldy.
I do like that a lot. I'll do. I guess we don't know for sure, but you know what? I'm going to do it regardless. I'll do Tyson Forrester, and I'm going to guess I have quite a bit of cap to spare.
You have like 76 left.
76. What's Brady?
You have 75 left. Brady's 76.
That'll get you.
You're looking at Florida guys.
Yeah, Reinhardt. Let's do Reinhardt.
All right, easy. Okay, thank you all for listening. Let's close this out with 73 minutes into the podcast. So follow us at Morningscape Pod. I'm at Fake Moods. DJ's at DJ_Mitchell94. DJ, anything else you want to say before we go?
No, just follow us on Twitter and whatnot. Bets are always there. They're always free for me. I don't charge, and you can always DM me if you have any questions. We're always open to any of that. Always love talking about stuff. We don't have data from the Zamboni. We don't have the Zamboni's a playoff one, right? We don't even have the Zamboni yet, but we're going to look into that. That should be coming soon. And we also just don't have data from the Best Puck regular season yet. But again, that'll come eventually. But definitely happy underdog playoffs to all, and excited for more contests to come and more content around that as well.
Okay. Thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring this podcast, and that'll do it. So thank you all for listening. From Doug, from DJ, from myself. Have a good slate, everybody, and we will see ya.